Hi. I was going to meet my dad, but he didn't show up. May I come in and use the phone?
Of course.
May I come in?
The telephone is over there.
The woman pointed further into the hallway. A grey telephone stood on a small table. Eli remained where she was outside the door. She hadn't yet been invited in. Right next to the door there was a cast-iron hedgehog shoe wiper with prickles made of piassava fibres. Eli wiped her shoes to cover her inability to enter.
Are you sure it's all right?
Of course. Come in, come in.
The woman made a tired gesture. Eli was invited. The woman seemed to have lost interest and walked into the living room, where Eli could hear the static whining of a TV. She had a yellow bow on one side of her head. On the other side, the bow had pulled loose into a hanging length of ribbon, which ran down her back like a pet snake. Eli walked into the hall, took off her shoes and jacket, lifted the telephone receiver, dialed a number at random, pretended to talk to someone, put the receiver down, drew air in through her nose. Cooking smells, cleaning agents, earth, shoe polish, winter apples, damp cloth, electricity, dust, sweat, wallpaper glue, and cat urine. Yes, a soot-black cat stood in the doorway to the kitchen, growling, the ears back flat, fur standing on end, back arched. It had a red band around its neck with a little metal cylinder, probably containing a slip of paper with the owner's name and address. Eli took a step towards the cat, and it bared its teeth, hissing. The body was tensed for attack. One more step. The cat retreated, pulling backward while continuing to hiss, maintaining eye contact. The hate pulsating through its body caused the metal cylinder to tremble. They took each other's measure. Eli moved slowly forward, forcing the cat back until it was in the kitchen, and then she closed the door. The cat continued to growl and mew angrily on the other side. Eli walked into the living room. The woman was sitting on a leather couch so well polished the light from the TV was reflected in it. She sat bolt upright, staring unstintingly at the blue flickering screen. On the coffee table in front of her was a bowl of crackers and a cutting board with 3 cheeses, an unopened bottle of wine, and 2 glasses. The woman did not seem to note Eli's presence, so absorbed was she by what she saw on the screen. A nature program, penguins at the South Pole. The male carries the egg on his feet so it will not come in contact with the ice. A caravan of penguins swaying from side to side moved across an ice desert. Eli sat down next to the woman. She sat stiffly, as if the TV was a disapproving teacher who was telling her off. When the female returns after 3 months, the male's layer of fat has been all but used up. 2 penguins rubbed their beaks together, greeting each other.
Are you expecting someone?
The woman flinched and stared without comprehension into Eli's eyes for a few seconds. The yellow bow accentuated how ravaged her face looked. She shook her head quickly.
No, help yourself.
Eli didn't move. The picture on the TV screen changed to a panorama of the southern parts of the former Soviet Georgia set to music. In the kitchen, the tone of the cat's meows had turned into something beseeching. There was a chemical smell in the room. The woman was exuding a hospital smell.
Is anyone going to come over?
Again the woman flinched as if she had been woken up, turned to Eli. This time she looked irritated, with a sharp furrow between her eyebrows.
No, no one's coming. Eat, if you like.
She pointed with a stiff finger at the cheeses.
Camembert, Gorgonzola and Roquefort. Eat, eat.
She looked sternly at Eli, and Eli helped herself to a cracker, put it in her mouth, and started to chew slowly. The woman nodded and turned her gaze back to the screen. Eli spat the chewy mass of crackers into her hand and dropped it onto the floor behind the armrest.
When are you leaving?
the woman asked.
Soon.
Stay as long as you like. It's all the same to me.
Eli moved a little closer, as if to see the TV better, until their arms touched. Something happened to the woman. She trembled and sank together, softened like a punctured coffee packet. Now, when she looked over at Eli, it was with a mild, dreamy gaze.
Who are you?
Eli's eyes were close to hers. The hospital smell wafted from the woman's mouth.
I don't know.
The woman nodded, reached for the remote control on the coffee table, and turned off the sound. In the spring, southern Georgia blooms with a barren beauty. The cat's beseeching meows could now be heard very clearly, but the woman didn't seem to care. She pointed to Eli's lap.
May I? Of course.
Eli shifted slightly away from the woman, who pulled up her legs and rested her head on Eli's lap. Eli slowly stroked her hair. They sat like that for a while. The shimmering backs of whales broke the surface of the water, spurting out a fountain of water, disappeared.
Tell me a story,
said the woman.
What do you want to hear?
Something beautiful.
Eli tucked a tendril of hair behind the woman's ear. She breathed slowly now, and her body was completely relaxed. Eli spoke in a low voice.
Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, there was a poor farmer and his wife. They had 3 children, a boy and a girl both old enough to work together with the adults, and then a little boy only 11 years old. Everyone who saw him said he was the most beautiful child they had ever seen. The father was in villanage to the lord who owned the land, and had to work many days for him. Therefore, it often fell to the mother and her 2 oldest to look after the house and garden. The youngest boy wasn't good for much. One day, the lord announced a competition for the families that worked his land. Everyone who had a boy between the ages of 8 and 12 had to enter. No reward was promised, no prize. Even so, it was called a competition. On the day of the competition, the mother took her youngest to the lord's castle. They were not alone. 7 other children, accompanied by one or both parents, had gathered in the courtyard of the castle. 3 more came. Poor families, the children dressed in the best clothes they had. They waited all day in the courtyard. When it was starting to get dark, a man came out of the castle and told them they could come in. Eli listened to the woman's breathing, deep and regular. She slept. Her breath was warm against Eli's knee. Right below her ear, Eli could discern the pulse ticking under loose, wrinkled skin. The cat was quiet. The credits for the nature program rolled on the TV. Eli put a finger on the woman's throat artery. It felt like a beating bird heart under her fingertip. Eli braced herself against the back of the couch and carefully pushed the woman's head forward so it leaned on Eli's knees. The sharp smell of Roquefort cheese drowned out the other smells. Eli pulled out a blanket from the back of the couch and draped it over the cheeses. A soft, squeaky sound, the woman's breathing. Eli leaned over and held her nose close to the woman's artery. Soap, sweat, the smell of old skin, and that hospital smell. Something else that was the woman's own smell, and beneath all this, the blood. The woman moaned when Eli's nose brushed against her throat, started to turn her head, but Eli gripped the woman's arms and chest with one hand, held the other one firmly around her head, opened her mouth as wide as she could, brought it down to the woman's throat until her tongue pressed against the artery, and bit down, locked her jaws. The woman jerked as if she had received an electric shock. Her limbs were flung out, and her feet hit the armrest with such force that she pushed away, and Eli ended up with the woman's back across her knees.
The blood spurted rhythmically out of the open artery and splashed against the brown leather of the couch. The woman screamed and waved her hands in the air, pulling the blanket from the table. A waft of blue cheese filled Eli's nostrils as she threw herself over the woman, pushing her mouth against her throat and drinking deeply. The woman's screams pierced her ears, and Eli let go with one arm in order to be able to place a hand over her mouth. The screams were muffled, but the woman's free hand went out to the coffee table, grabbed the remote control, and banged it into Eli's head. The sound of plastic breaking as the noise of the TV came on again. The theme tune of Dallas floated out into the room, and Eli tore her head away from the woman's throat. The blood tasted like medication. Morphine. The woman stared up at Eli with wide eyes. Now Eli perceived yet another flavour, a rotten taste that combined with the smell of the blue cheese. Cancer. The woman had cancer. Eli's stomach turned with revulsion. She had to sit up and let go of the woman in order not to vomit. The camera flew over South Fork while the music rose. The woman wasn't screaming anymore, just lay still on her back while the blood pumped out of her in weaker and weaker spurts, streaming down behind the sofa cushions. Her eyes were damp and remote as she met Eli's gaze and said, "Please, please." Eli held back her impulse to be sick, leaned forward over the woman. "Excuse me? Please." "Yes, what is it you want?" "Please, please." After a while, the woman's eyes changed, stiffened, became unseeing. Eli closed them. They opened again. Eli took the blanket and covered her face with it, sat up straight on the couch. The blood was palatable, even though it tasted bad, but the morphine